Well, guys, it's funny. I'm always trying to like think of how am I going to do the intro. I got to outdo the last one, right? Well, this one's going to be, it's not going to be hard to outdo because there's only a few artists who have work on my wall, right? Uh, as I look just to my left, I've got Dennis Cowan over here. I've got, I'll save that wall. Over here is a bunch of Ken Lashley. There's one Stealth Freeze piece there. And you, Dennis, and Ken are the only three people who have more than one art piece on my wall. I've got Storm right next to me right here. I've got Joe Mullen over there. I've got Nubia on that same wall. So there's a whole lot of J Hero in this room right now, and I'm very pleased to have the man himself on the Comics Are Dope podcast. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm okay, taking it one day at a time. I appreciate you for having me here today.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate you. I don't remember. I think I do remember actually where I first came across your work. I think it was one of those like portfolio day hashtags on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
And you kind of came across my feed. And I'm always just looking for like dope artists. But when I was getting this room together, I was like, you know what? It would be really cool if not only did I have a bunch of black characters on the wall, but like if they were all done by black artists. And so I put a call out on Twitter and my man Danny was like, "Have you checked out J Hero?" And I was like, "Yes, actually, I own a J Hero piece that was in my last studio. But you're right, I should just get more." So, so that's how it went. That's how you ended up with three pieces on the wall.
Hey, that's what's up. I am very honored and in good company, so thank you.
No problem at all. And so I did want to get into just kind of like, where are you from? How long have you been into art? Like, was it always comics? Like, who are you, Jay?
Who is Jay Hero? Well, I grew up as a always an artist, fine and performing artist, always drawing initially. I was the kid who was um very adventurous, very flamboyant, and just performative in the way that I love to just have fun and act and do so all kinds of. Whenever my mom would put on like a gospel song, I would be directing the choir or whatever, pretending to. Yeah, I was that kid. That was me at 1 years old, like having all this personality. And so moving forward to today, you know, after tons of creative and artistic adventures, having to found myself and exploring a variety of different identities in the past, from drawing to from singing to music. It's like I play piano, I used to play drums, I played a little bit of the saxophone, acting a bit, dancing, minoring in college. But the one thing that's always been consistent with me has been my drawing, illustration, and things like that. And I also went to school for graphic design. So that was my major. And so I combined those illustrative sensibilities with my design sensibilities. And, I have what I think is a unique creative voice today. And so really what you learn about design is that it's all about storytelling. And then I've always been interested in and not really knowing until I got older, I've always been really interested in telling stories.
Mm.
And so it wasn't until like I said, I got a little bit older where I started to wanted to explore that in a variety of different other ways through different mediums. And so which eventually led me to creating my own comic and story. I previously to that, I was stuck. I didn't really figure out what kind of story I wanted to tell. I didn't really I didn't know, but another thing that's always been consistent with me is I've always wanted to inspire positive change in the world. And so, through my love for superheroes and comics and things like that, and also through my artistic and creative sensibilities, I've always tried to find ways to combat injustice and to provide a platform where people can find their voice or provide opportunities where people can find their voices. And so it eventually led me to creating this story, um, where it was where and I'll talk a bit about this in a little bit, but where honestly the story itself is really the intention is to help people find their inner strength and their inner power.
Mm.
And so, and that's been a lot of my work through, whether it be through art, through, I used to have a nonprofit where I combine my nerd sensibilities with social justice. So, for example, the nonprofit that I ran, I organized, this is back when I was 25, I organized a Comic-Con. It was free school supplies, free comics, free food, free video game tournament, free and accessible event at a community event at a community center. The following year, I took over 150 youth to see Black Panther for free with their free African drum and dance performances, free Black literature, free Black art, food, all that kind of stuff. And then I organized a video game program. It was so my life has really been all about giving back and also just trying to find my trying to find my voice within the goal of just being a force for good in the world, whether it be creating stories that inspire that or just doing that through direct action. So that is the gist of who I am, someone who tries to be a good person, someone who tries to, whether it be through my action, through the stories that I tell, through all those things. And I try to be consistent at least. And so, yeah, those are things that are very important to me.
Nice. And so I'm curious now, like how your background and your, lived experience has sort of contributed to who you are now. Where are you from?
Uh, I grew up in Detroit for like 12 years and I moved to like Mount Clemens, a place called Mount Clemens here in Michigan. And then I was in my college town for a bit. But currently I live in outside of the outskirts of Detroit right now. So I'm not in Detroit. I won't claim that yet because I'm not in Detroit because some people are like, I understandably, you got to be from the city to say you're in the city. And I
Uh,
respect that entirely. So I'm not in Detroit again, yeah, but I'm on the outskirts of the city. And so in some ways I feel like I've reconnected with it in some ways because although I'm not completely, in Detroit, I'm like right around the corner. So it feels nice to be kind of back, you
mm.
know.
And you alluded earlier to just your upbringing, right? Like your mom playing gospel music, you being from, the greater Detroit area. Like, what was your childhood like? What were some of the values you would say like were instilled in maybe not so much what was given to you, but what did you take from childhood that's still important to you now?
My mom always instilled in me, even today, the belief to, not give up, things like that. I remember a very specific saying she always said, she still says it till this day. Um, she'd always tell me, "Can't don't live here. Um, you can do it." And that resonated with me in so many ways, right? She always tried to instill those precepts of just perseverance and resilience in me. And so those are things that stuck with me today. That's probably one of the reasons why I'm such a hard worker. So I get it from my mama. So yeah, for sure. I would say that also just my mom was always very careful with nurturing my creativity. She wanted to make sure that I had a play box to play in, to be able to explore and to find myself and to figure out who I was in a safe and affirming space. And because of that, I was allowed to find my voices in different areas that has sort of accumulated to the person that I am today. Um, so yeah, I would say that just that resilience, that sense of confidence that although I'm still working on that, but definitely that sense of perseverance and resilience. I'm a very hard worker in part because of my mom and um yeah, yeah, for sure.
Got you. Okay. Um, not to make this too much of like I don't know. We're here to talk about comics, but just talking to you, right? There's just things that I'm picking up that's just like, this is interesting. I know in your language, right? Like there's a lot of, I would just say empathy, right?
Mm.
But like when I went to school, I was an NAACP. So like a lot of like social justice, voter registration, sort of human rights. We kind of stayed at the center of like an activism, right? And so some of the like just the I don't want to say buzzwords, but some of the words used, right? Like direct action, right? Like stuff like that is interesting to hear coming from someone else. Um, but I'm curious, like I said, when I look at your work and even the way you describe some of your past activities, right? What I see is sort of a love for people, right? Even as we get into like the story of Star Wielder, talking about like injustices and people, kind of finding their voice, finding their strengths, and kind of trying to bring that out of people. But like what I'm hearing from you is a lot of I see you and I see something beyond what you may see in yourself. And I'm curious as to like where that comes from. Like what's trained you to look at people in that way?
I don't think it's necessarily a training. I think it's more so just an acquired or learned, and also in some ways, an inherent perception that I've grown to have of the world.
Mhm.
Whereas I see the world we're living in today, and I tell myself, this cannot be it. And I know I'm not alone in believing that many people like myself and leaving you, I'm sure, and like other people who believe and earnestly are fighting for to get to the other side, to figure out what the world looks like on the other side of all of this, on the other side of this wall that at capitalism, imperialism, all the isms have built around us. And each piece by piece, each of us, I believe, has a role to play in doing our part to take a brick by brick apart, take this wall. Some of us are going at the wall pretty hard, tearing it up. Some of us can only take it away brick by brick, and that's okay. But I feel like we all have a role to play to take that wall apart so that we can all discover, our potential outside of the limitations we placed on ourselves, which is what capitalism is in part, what colonialism is, racism, all those things. These are limitations, human, fallible limitations that we have historically placed on ourselves in some ways. Um, Sexism, all those things, like it's all connected. And so if we can find a way to work through those things, and I feel like that in part starts with an internal inspection, internal reflection of who we are, understanding our values, understanding that we are worthy, understanding that we have the capacity for goodness. Um, uh, we have the capacity for change and evolution, but in order to get to that point, in my opinion, you have to be reminded of your strength. You have to be reminded of your potential for good. Because sometimes people forget that, hey, I can do this. I don't have to be complicit. You don't. You can use your voice to speak out. It's a choice to stay silent. It's a choice to do certain things, but other things aren't choices. Because sometimes when you feel powerless, that's not a choice. That's a feeling that you're experiencing. The feelings of powerlessness that a lot of us are feeling right now, who may not feel encouraged or may not feel emboldened or feel afraid to speak out, that's natural. But my hope is that when people read the story that I'm creating with Star Wielder, is that people will find their inherent strength, their strength to be a force for good in the world. Because honestly, we need more people who are standing up, who are speaking out. I think that's part of the issue is that, we live in a world that lacks empathy, that lacks so much of that. And we also live in a world full of bystanders, meaning people are waiting for someone else to speak out, someone else to do something. But then I'm going to say this, like I said on another interview, why not you? It should be you. Why not you be the one to speak out, to say something? Why does it have to be someone else? Why wait? So
That's timely. Speaking of time, this is the time where I kind of pause the flow that we're in. And for the audio listener, I'm going to try to describe J Hero's art um, in case you haven't seen it. So, like I said, I've got a few J Hero pieces in my house, and I don't know. The more I get into comics, the more I appreciate different things about different artists, right? So, like Dennis Cowan has like this really sort of loose and sketchy style, but yet like if I have to pick one thing that I like about Dennis's work is like when he does like straight on faces, I don't know how he conveys so much depth with just like a
mhm.
scribbly line on it with a pencil. Like that's crazy to me, right? Um,
Yeah.
Ken Lashley, like it's him and Juan Fernandez. They've just got this thing together. First of all, when I found out that Ken basically goes like from rough pencils to marker straight. Like there's
Wow.
no, he
Yeah.
doesn't refine the pencil. He just goes like
Wow.
straight to inks, and like what you see is what he did the first
Okay.
time. That's crazy. Um, but it's like when I see Ken Lashley's work, it's like sort of that classic 90s bombastic stuff. And it's like the people that he chooses to draw
Hmm.
always look cool, right?
Hmm.
When I look at Jay Hero's work, at least the art that I've got here in my wall, on in my room, right? First of all, I've got three female characters. I've got Joe Mullen, I've got Nubia, and I've got Storm. And if I have to describe them in one word, each of them is like is a majestic painting, right? Like, um, and I told you this privately, but like when I got the Nubia print and the Joe Mullen print, those are newer. I had the Storm in my last place, but when he sent the prints over, for the longest time they were just kind of sitting on the floor in my office. And my 4-year-old comes in one day and she's like, "Oh, Daddy, who's this?" But
Oh.
she's like sitting in front of it like it's a mirror. Like y'all
Oh.
ever, all right, this,
I
this is
remember
gonna
that.
it's gonna go super black, right? Y'all
Yeah.
know like every time some girl joins a sorority and they post that same photo and it's like the little girl standing in front of the mirror and it's like what's looking back at her is just the fully grown sorority woman throwing up the hand signs. Like that is how she is staring at this print of Nubia. And I was like, okay, it has to stay now. Like, but when I think
Oh,
about that print specifically, it almost gives me like Kehinde Wiley vibes. Like when Kehinde Wiley was like really popping, like
mhm.
during the Obama administration, a lot of people were kind of taken with how he would draw these sort of everyday street level black people, but like in these sort of Renaissance poses and give them like these basically presidential portraits. But it's like it's just a dude with a cigarette and a do rag. And it's like that's and so you're seeing this beauty in people that you don't necessarily view as beautiful.
Mm.
And when I'm looking at your work, that's what resonates with me, right? Like I told you, it's you and Sway. Like y'all draw like the best black women. And it's not like, oh, they're the most curvy and it's just like
Mhm.
it's I don't want to disparage any other work. But you know you've seen the images, right? Like you know, there's you'll see a John Stewart cover and it's like, can we just like can we line this man up, please? Like, why does everybody have to have the soft hairline? Like, what is going on with
Yeah,
it? Right?
there was a big thing about that with Luke Cage, I think, with the one of the pieces. I understood it, I guess I understood what it was coming from, but I don't know. But I do understand like that because I think it has a tendency to happen with a lot of non-white or non-black artists
Hmm.
who just don't know how to draw, whether it be black skin, black hair, especially dark skin.
Yeah.
Like that's so important. For me, especially like drawing darker skin is super important for me. And I think I've noticed as I watch my style grow over the years, like I've always drawn like black characters. And I think just my art has become more dramatic over time. I
Mm.
my color my work used to be very colorful. It used to be very, very bright, very
Uh,
vivid, very vibrant. I'd say that some of my work isn't today, but there's a lot of drama.
mm.
There's a scene, there's a moment I'm painting that I'm
Yeah.
trying to capture, and that's the ideal of it too. I'm trying to capture a moment, a scene that as you mentioned, that captures the magic or the majesty in some cases of these characters. And even if it's not a sort of a scene that's the intention, I still want to capture the intention of the character, whether it be through drama, through action, through
Mhm.
emotion, something that captures the viewer in a different way that maybe they haven't seen with this character before.
Yeah. No, like the Storm print was the first one I was like, okay, this is I'm taken aback by how good this is. It's
Yeah.
for those of you who again you're listening. I'll put a picture of this up somewhere, but it is Storm in the middle of a rainstorm, right? She's up in the clouds and she's just kind of she's backlit by a lightning bolt which is amazing. And then there's like lightning coming from her eyes. And then the other thing that I love that Jay does is he plays with the medium. And so, like, yes, this is an image, I assume created digitally,
Hmm.
right? And you could have printed it out as is, would have worked for me.
Hmm.
But there's this gold foil. And so this is Storm in her 90s animated series outfit with the gold trim. And the gold trim is gold foil,
Hmm.
as are the lightning bolts coming out of her eyes. And it's just like it is just striking enough. It catches the light when I'm in here. And it's just like it, like you said, the image is dark, it's dramatic, right? And so it's almost like she's in shadow with the exception of like some of the white of her costume.
Hmm.
But then it's like those eyes are just glowing. And then that
Yeah.
even that backlit. Anyway,
Yeah.
the point is just that the point is just that it's a scene that just feels like there's no story you're going off of. There's no writer giving you a script like, and then this happened. It
Yeah.
was just that's the moment in time you chose to depict. And it's like I can hear the storm, I can hear the theme music, like all of it, just looking at it. And all of your work is evocative in that way. What I love about the Nubia print is that it's not Nubia in like a traditional costume. In
Hmm.
fact, if I didn't tell you it was Nubia, you probably wouldn't know. It would just be like, here's a black woman in some armor.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's like even the way it's the same deal with the gold foil. She's got like a gold, just like sun behind her, in the
Hmm.
same way you would usually see like some of like the Renaissance painting or era paintings of like Jesus, and he's got like that halo behind him. Um, Jesus or Constantine's son or whoever it was,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, and she's just standing there with her sword. She's got a little cape draped down, and it's just like, yo, like this is swag, like that. That's what it strikes me as. Like this is swag.
And
Um,
that's actually my, if I'm correct, that's my top selling piece next to the, I think the Black Power Storm.
mm,
Yeah, it is. People always ask when when I'm at cons or selling, in publicly, oh my God, what is that? Who is that?
mhm,
That's Nubia. Like, oh my God, that's my girl. Like, people get excited when they see her. It's like it's different when you see these in person, and
mhm.
it's so hard to capture like it's over, the phone or pictures and stuff like that. And so I got to work on that. But when people see it in person, the prints in person, it's always like they do a double take. I remember one time someone did like a double take. They had to go back, come back to the table. They were like, "Oh my, I've never seen." They would say like, "I've never seen Storm depicted like this before," or because I have a different choices to choose from Storm, so people have options. So
Mhm.
people have always, quite a few people have said, "I've never seen Storm depicted like this before," or like this, or in this kind of way, and I love hearing that. Because I know how valuable and how important these characters mean to people. And so I want to make sure that I show them in a very respectable and like a very appropriate light.
Yeah, and that's how it feels. It just feels like you took your time with them. Like we're gonna give them the attention they deserve. And yeah, and I've told people like in my room tour because I film in this room, I don't have pictures of my family in here.
Mhm.
Um, but it's like having these prints on the wall. It like kind of makes it feel like a family reunion when I walk in, right?
Okay.
There's my cousin
I love
Steve, there's
it.
Static over there. Um,
Hey, got the whole family reunion. Okay.
right, right. But
It's a cookout.
so it's like the you go to cons and there are prints. And again, not to disparage anybody's work,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
but it's like when you pick these up, they're like fine art pieces. Like you want to wear gloves pulling it out of the
Okay, I
case.
have my gloves too, always near me, by just in case.
Right. And so it's like it breathes that like this is worthy of respect. And just because you take your time with the medium, that means the subject of it is worthy of that respect. And I think that's something that, you know, feels missing in the world a lot of times.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think in a world full of hustle culture and everyone's moving so quickly, even with me, I got to remind myself to slow the hell down, dude. Like, you need to sit your ass down and slow down. Like, because we're moving so quickly. And I think and that's part of the and that's by design. We live in a very I'm noticing like in Western ideology, Western culture, I just watched a video of this young lady talking about how in African cultures, in some African cultures, the concept of time is very different. So in some African cultures, I forgot which culture it was, but she mentioned that the concept of the future is not really the same. It's not existed in some aspects of African cultures because the priority is on the now and on the past, and it's not the distant future is not the most important thing. It's the it's like I said, what's happening now, maybe the more recent future. But and I feel like from what she was explaining, she said that because we live in a society that is so focused on progression and the future, we cannot fix the problems we have now. We cannot focus on the things we have now as much because there's a sense of urgency to always move forward and progress. And without, because you see how fast technology moves and things like that and progresses quickly. And to connect it all back, it's just to say that having a sense of mindfulness and groundedness in today's society is in a lot of ways a radical act because it commands you command your space and your sense of time by reclaiming it um in a society that tells you that you need to grind in order to be seen, in order to
Mm.
be heard, in order to be valued. But I feel like taking a step back and taking your time on your art. This is for anyone who's listening right to this right now, who's even an inspiring artist, or even who's an artist right now. But I would encourage you to really find your voice and really take the time to do that. Don't rush. And that's something that I'm continuing to work on. So don't rush through your process. And I know, when you are living paycheck to paycheck like I am, there's always a sense of urgency, but I'm trying my best to find that balance, you know what I'm saying, especially in today's society. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's not always easy to hear as a YouTuber,
Yeah.
right? Like, because it's like if I'm not focused on the next five videos, then it's like I'm probably behind.
That's what it is, and I agree. I have to be the same because you got to be ahead of the game to be on the game, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so, and that's the thing. So like with me, I gotta like be not only an artist, I gotta be market my stuff too. I gotta make content. I gotta make videos, and I gotta do all this stuff. I don't necessarily want to do all the time, but you have to do it, and that's unfortunate, because that's how the world is. But the thing is, if you can find a piece, if there's something that you can have for yourself to take your time with outside of the hustle, outside of the grind, and if it's your art, really try to, art is so valuable, it's so precious. And I would say if you feel this pressure to get things done in a certain time because of of this hustle, this grind culture, I would just say really step back and ask yourself your why. I always tell people this, whenever you are drawing or even as an artist in general, it's important to have this reflection or this introspection of your why, your true north, to really understand why are you creating. It could be just because you want to create, to find joy, to have fun, or it could be because you have a story to tell. But in those moments when you feel discouraged, when you feel like I cannot do this anymore, or why am I up at 3 a.m. working on this stuff, editing this video, working on this project, writing this script, when you remind yourself of your why, then you remember. So that's why it's important to have that, especially in the times of grind and hustle culture, because you get lost in all of that. So if you don't have a direction, your true North Star guiding you throughout all this chaos, you would get lost in the darkness.
For sure. Now, you talked about being a polymath of sorts, right? Like being
Mhm.
given space to explore all these different facets of your personality and creative expression. So, from music to writing, you've taken a stab at like nonprofits and all that, but art had been constant. What made you decide like that's what you were going to focus on? Was like the visual art side of things.
That's where I found my true voice, or part of my true voice, if you will. And also just me as a writer, I felt like as I'm growing up, as I'm understanding the world differently, as I'm evolving as a person, I've always written in the past, but in the comic book medium, it's different, obviously. Um, and so as those things go hand in hand, I'm exploring this natural evolution that I'm experiencing right now. And I feel like art has been my way of communicating my values in some ways, the kind of world I want to see, the world that I do see. Um, yeah, and I feel like it's going to be the tool that I use, like with Star Wielder and even beyond that, to really, like I said earlier, to hopefully give people a sense of courage and inspiration, but also, to just help people see themselves, specifically Black people, specifically people who are racialized and oppressed in the world, see themselves in ways that they've never seen themselves represented before, or maybe in ways that they rarely see themselves represented.
Got you. And with that, let's talk about Star Wielder because for as long as I've known of you online, right? Like I've seen your work and interacted with it as pinups, as like potential covers, as like you know, here's a splash of art, capturing a moment. And this project is something very different. Like it is the start of an ongoing series. Where did the idea come from? Like, how has it been going from sort of pinups and action shots to sequential storytelling and how have you been enjoying the process?
Yeah, so honestly, in some ways, this project has been maybe happening since 2017. And I say that because I haven't necessarily been working on it since then, but the origins of it started in 2017 because I say that because it was at that time I created a piece of original art, original character called Kiara J, who I called the Star Wielder. Had nothing to do with what the story is like today. It was a completely different idea. At the time, Kiara, the character in my story, the main character in my story was a little girl who she had big hair. Still has big hair now, but big hair. She had these big gauntlets, and she was like this cosmic fighter. It was very different than what I have today. It was just a one shot kind of thing that I wanted to. It was a picture that I drew, and I said, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And so I revisited that image later, and I said, "I kind of like this idea." And I wanted to do something with it, but then like after maybe a year or so, I kind of let it go. So fast forward to maybe 2023, I said, you know what, I think I'm ready to tell my own story, but I don't know what to tell. And so Facebook reminded me that I did that art piece back in 2017. I said, huh. Okay, well, maybe I can do something with this. And then I started on this idea of like, well, I have this idea of the character, but what about the thing? What about the story? What message am I trying to tell? And so I thought about the experiences that I went through with my depression, with my anxiety, with my obsessive compulsive disorder, all my mental health, issues, and also my journey dealing with like, for example, suicide ideation and just things like that. And I put that together with this desire to create this story and taking this character and I created Star Wielder um, out of this desire to tell the story about turning fear into power. Because I've experienced, when you have depression, when you have anxiety, dealing with fearful thoughts or distorted thinking, it's very common, it's very normal. I have chronic depression, so I take medication for it and everything. It's a journey. But what I've learned over time through shadow work and through, for example, me learning things like some of the precepts behind internal family systems, which is the psychological approach to seeing emotions as parts. So, for example, as opposed to saying, I am angry, you can say, a part of me is angry. So, therefore, you create a sense of distance between this emotion and you. So, through that space, you're able to say, okay, I am not anger, but I'm experiencing anger. So, you allow yourself to calm down because you detach yourself from your emotion, not in a way that like you deny it, but you're able to observe it. You're able to see it for what it is.
Mhm.
Then you can say, okay, now I'm ready to get through it. And so with that lesson, learning that with emotions, you can't get over emotions, you have to get through them. like that is the heart of the story about for Star Wielder, again, turning fear into power. So for Kiara, so to provide the spiel, so Kiara, Star Wielder is a story that features Kiara, young black girl from Detroit who's 14, who's pyrophobic, who one day is can control fire. And now that's obviously a very traumatic experience for her. But she's doing all of this while she's also dealing with a lot of loss, a lot of grief, because this traumatic evolution is happening on the cusp of an attack and through after the loss of her grandmother, very very pivotal and important figure in her life, someone who's not only important to her but to the community of Detroit, which is where the story takes place. And so Kiara is going through this traumatic evolution, trying to understand what's happening to her, trying to understand uh, this change without this, again, this guiding figure in her life. And so part of Kiara's journey is learning to face the fear of her own strength. And
Mm,
so how would she want to do this without her grandmother, without um, the sense of direction, but also being surrounded by a community that still loves and uplifts her. And so I really wanted to paint a picture of what isolation, what depression, what fear can actually look like, even if you are surrounded by love. So although for example, Kiara's grandmother is gone, she still has a community, like I said, that loves her. But she's still going through all these emotions, all these different things, because this is a very traumatic change for her. But while all this is going on, um, uh, Detroit is under attack. And so Kiara is really the only one who can who can face this attacker who can save her city. But in order to do that, she really has to face her fear first. Because she is the only one who has the power to do it. But she has to get through her fear first. Otherwise, she'll risk losing everything and everyone she loves, including herself. And so there's a lot of so this story is about turning fear into power. The story is about legacy because in issue one, we explore the legacy of Kiara through the events leading up to her birth and the theme of fear into power as we explore it through her grandmother at a younger age, because we see how she became her grandmother and all of that. This is her adoptive grandmother, so we see how that became a thing. We see her connection to the Burwood Wall, which is a segregation wall here in Detroit that was established in the 1950s. We see Kiara's connection to the 1967 Detroit Uprising, which was 5 days long. And so, again, this idea of turning fear into power is explored through not only through Kiara, the character, but the other characters as well in their arcs, and also through including the city of Detroit, which is treated as a character in this story. Like I said, Detroit is a primarily black city who has been, like a lot of black cities in the country, has been a victim of racism and urban renewal and just for example, here in the 1950s and I believe in the 1940s, I think it was the 1950s or the 1960s, there was a historical black community here in Detroit called Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, two historical black communities here that were completely uprooted for a freeway here in the city. So entire communities, flourishing communities were completely just destroyed to make way for urban renewal. And so Star Wielder sort of explores this idea of Detroit in that kind of way. What happens when Detroit takes all of the things that happens to it, but is able to turn it into something powerful, something good? Now we won't see the result of that until we get to issue two, but we see the beginnings of that in issue one, again, leading up to the events of Kiara's birth. And so I really wanted Star Wielder to not only be a story about Kiara's journey, but to be a story about Black people's journey starting from Detroit, starting from her grandmother, starting from the community, people in her community, seeing their journey to turning their own fears into power. Because again, this is in a lot of ways, Kiara's journey is a lesson. Whereas, for example, when we talk about turning fear into power, you can explore that through a more corrupted lens too. There's a way for that to be inverted. And we explore that through, as you see, if you look into if you read the preview of Star Wars, the 12-page preview, you'll see that there's a character called Jacob in the story. Jacob is going to be the antagonist of the story. Jacob is um, a young white boy who is trying to follow his older brother, who is a white supremacist and a cop. And we see the beginnings of Jacob in the 1960s, where we see him as a reluctant to follow his brother's orders, to be like his brother, but he wants to be like his brother because his brother is the only one who's been taking care of him because they're both homeless. And so for Jacob's journey, Kiara's antagonist in the story, his 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 story is a warning. And so we go from Jacob, this hesitant, this reluctant kid who's questioning, is it right to make certain choices that his brother is doing, to him being completely on board with this white supremacist shit. So, but it's not a sense of, and I wanted to explore it in that way to, because I wanted to allow people to understand how people go from point A to point B. Because not everyone, you're not born racist.
Mhm.
It's conditioning, it's grooming, it's intentional, it's intentional. And so my goal is not because this isn't a story about necessarily about well, although white supremacy in part is a part of the story, um, it's much broader than that.
Mhm.
And so for Jacob, although we explore the themes of white supremacy through him, we also explore the themes of loss, of grief. So for example, Kiara and Jacob, you have these two characters in the story. They both experience great loss. But we see one who's conditioned to be a white supremacist and has this history of violence in some ways, but also is still reluctant. One who grows up in a community full of love and full of care. We see how they deal with grief and pain in different ways and how they turn their pain into power in different ways. And then what happens when their paths converge. Now, like I said, Jacob grew up in the 60s, Kiara grew up in present day. We'll see how they converge, in the story. It's not going to be what you think, but it's going to be an interesting path as to how their paths converge moving forward.
Nice. Now, I'm I'm deeply curious about Kiara's journey, right? Just sort of overcoming fear in the face of great loss. And I'm curious to know, because it's like when we tell stories, and specifically guiding characters through these types of lessons, I guess there's two ways where we can approach it from, right? Like it's like either you as the writer have learned that lesson and now you're kind of walking the character through those types of steps.
Hmm.
Or, maybe it was aspirational. It's like, this is something I would love to get over. Let me try this writing as an exercise. I'm curious, like, because I feel like, it could also just be a little bit of both. Like, so in what ways do you feel like, all right, here's something that I've gone through, is deeply personal to me, and I want to bring that through this character. And then on the other side of that, like maybe through this process of bringing this to life, is there something that maybe you learned about yourself that you didn't necessarily know going into it?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I think my journey with depression and my mental health definitely inspired this story, my journey with shadow work, because I'm really excited about this. Oh my God, there are technically two antagonists in the story, um, but and I'll say this, that Kiara, although Kiara is battling, her external battle is with Jacob. As I said before, she has an internal situation and battle with herself. And we'll see how that's manifested in different ways in the story. And so when I say shadow work, in some ways Kiara is really has to face her shadow, literally has to face her shadow. And we'll explore that in the story to see what that means, how that is depicted visually. Because shadow work to me, as I've learned it, is really about facing your shadow, not again going over them or ignoring them. It's about facing them and really being inquisitive and questioning them. Because for Kiara's journey, I want it to be not about her denying her fear, but to accept it but it takes time to get from point A to B. And the journey of acceptance is something that I had to go through with when it comes to my depression, for example. Like I had to learn, like, oh well, this is going to be here. Well, I gotta figure out ways to get through it and accept that it's here and work, and work with it. And so I can't, because by me being consistently like, oh, I'm depressed, damn it, like, oh, I've been upset about it. if I'm chronically depressed, if it's gonna be with me for the rest of my life, possibly, it's not gonna help,
Mm,
with me like being in that mood all the time. So what can I do to make the most out of my situation? To turn my pain into power, to turn my pain into purpose. And so that is sort of the intention behind that there. And then the other side of that, what I've learned from this experience is, I've learned more about my resilience, myself as an artist. I've grown so much as a writer, as an artist, as a storyteller. Um, and Kiara's my niece. I feel so bad for putting her through all this shit. I'm like, girl, I'm so sorry. Well, we're gonna get through this together. But and I'm like, we're gonna get through this. It's interesting because you feel so connected to these characters when you get to a certain point in your writing journey. You're like, okay, you feel connected to these characters, and you get to a point where they start speaking to you, and they tell you who they are. And so it's interesting when you get to that point because I then feel like I can be inspired by Kiara's journey.
mm,
Like maybe get to a point, like you mentioned, where I'm not in my life yet, but maybe she is. And I can
mm.
learn a lesson. Although, yeah, she's 14, but you learn from young people all the time. I think that's another thing that adults need to do more. Be open to learning more from young people. They can teach us a lot. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's so much value in that as well. So yeah, I guess that would sum it up.
Nice. No, I'm gonna back up a second. I would like you to explain the concept of shadow work for the layman, right? Like I'm in the Bible Belt, so it's like I've heard the term, and it's like it. First time I heard the term, I was like, it sound, well, I'm quote Eddie Murphy. Don't be called no dark spirits, right? Like,
Ah,
and it's like, what is the concept of shadow work, and why is it important to one's mental health journey?
it's interesting that you said that because there's a lot of people in the church community who I know, like just when they hear just mental health in general in the Black community is not seen as it's not it's still a work in progress. But the term shadow work, when it was brought up, I remember being on TikTok and people were like, "Oh hell no, you get them demons up my house. I don't play with demons." And it's just people's ignorance in some ways just don't. In some ways, because they don't understand. And in some ways, it's not their fault, but in some ways, it's because like if you are in the church, if you hear something that is like remotely different, you're like, "Oh, that's demonic." I grew up with that. I do not like that. But anyways, shadow work is this notion of again uh dealing with your heavy emotions, at least how I understand it, dealing with your heavy emotions, like your darker emotions like sadness, despair, all those things, with a sense of understanding, with a sense of compassion, and a sense of acceptance, meaning that you're in some ways you're having a conversation with these darker parts of yourself to understand why do they vocalize themselves the way they do. For example, if you're having anger issues, the shadow work that you need to do is to sit down and talk to the angry part of yourself. Like, why is this part of yourself angry? And then maybe through that journey, through the work that you do, you discover that that part is wounded. That part is angry because of trauma, because of something that happened to you. And then it's through that revolution, through that understanding that you can begin to work through that anger and with it in some ways too, and maybe use it to your advantage. Because anger has a place. Because it's not to say that anger it doesn't belong or that anger doesn't have a place. Because that anger could be there because something again bad happened to you. But now that you're in a place that where hopefully you are safe and secure, what can you do now to affirm that part of yourself that it is also safe and
Mm,
secure? So that is what I understand shadow work to be.
got you. Okay. So if the notion of, someone seeks therapy because perhaps they feel something is wrong, right? Like they're sad, they're so whatever, something's not functioning well. And so if the goal of therapy is to like go get happy, Linda, as Will Smith once said, then, the natural tendency could just be to run away from anything that makes you sad or angry or, these dark feelings, right? And so the concept of shadow work is like, well, let's not run away from that as the goal. Let's perhaps run toward it to figure out like, okay, is there a cure, so to speak? Is there a
Mm,
way that we can have a more balanced approach to this to where it's not like such wild swings. Let's
Hmm.
understand why we're feeling so that we can address how we're feeling.
Yeah. And I always say this, if you are at war with any part of yourself, you would not be happy. Whether you are combating your depression, like I've seen people say, I don't, and understandably, like fear, people have an interesting relationship with it. Like some people believe fear doesn't belong. I don't believe that. I fear has a place. It's there to keep you safe, but it's how you deal with it that I think it's, that's what matters. Fear
Mm.
has a place. All your emotions have a role, have a place. So to deny them of that inherent worth, of that inherent value that they have, I think that doesn't do you any good. But I think but you have to sometimes remind those parts of yourself of their role. Like,
Yeah.
hey, like I know you're wounded, but let me figure out like what is harming you, what is like you have to literally talk to yourself, even journal if you want to. Like that's another big part of shadow work, journaling and writing, things like that, because you really want to get to know yourself a bit more, because people tend to run away from the darker parts of themselves, like their shadow, because the shadow is dark, it's scary. You're like, I don't want to deal with that shit, it's heavy, it hurts, my grief is there. Maybe I lost someone very important to me there. Maybe I lost a part of myself there that I'm grieving. There's a lot of hurt and pain there. So it's understandable why people may demonize it or may not work through those emotions. But if you gain the courage to do that, and that's the thing too, gaining the courage to do that. Courage is key word. When you gain the courage to do that, I want you to recognize that it is a courageous act.
That's that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I don't, and I guess not to brag, right? Because it's not a bragging thing, but like I've never
Mhm.
been to therapy, right? And it's like, the more you have conversations with people who have, it's like this makes sense, right? As a way to contextualize how you're feeling, um,
Mhm.
and at the very least, develop language around things so that you can address them.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like a lot of these, like, I'm fortunate in that my wife is like a sounding board, and it's like
Mhm.
you're in close proximity with someone. Like for me, marriage is like that the funhouse mirror. It's going to exaggerate those things in you that you probably don't like and other people certainly don't, right? And so it's like you're either going to address those things or you're going to try to hide them. And it's like,
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
for me, I guess my philosophy has just been like, if I'm gonna be married to you for the rest of my life, like I'm not gonna like, there ain't no hiding going on. There's only, you know,
What you gonna hide? Like you get only so much you can do. Like you gonna get caught eventually.
right, right. And so it's like,
Right.
it kind of forces you to
Yeah.
have those conversations, right? It's one thing when it's like, okay,
Mm.
I'm a little tired. I like to sleep in. I'm not feeling it today. And it's another one. It's like, okay, this is you every day. Like,
Mm.
why? What is it?
What's
What
going
is
on?
keeping you on the
Yeah.
couch, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, you have to sort of deal with those things, figure out, okay, you said this to me the other day, and I didn't want to admit it in the moment, but when you said this, it triggered this memory from when I was like 5, and I just got defensive, and I just didn't want to talk to you anymore.
Mm.
And it's
See,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
it's that's interesting. All that to say, right, it's one thing when you have like a live-in springboard to talk things through with, and it's another when you're trying to like navigate those things, and maybe you don't have the knowledge of self to be like, yeah, this is what this makes me feel like. You just know
Yeah.
I don't like
That's
where
what
I'm
you
at right
feel.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not everyone has that self-awareness, and it takes a lot to get to that point. And I
right.
want and I want to say this too. There is strength in your shadow. And
Mm,
that's another point of the story too, that there is power and strength there. And that in a lot of ways, just as there is power in your light, there is power in your shadow. I think people deny themselves of that. They
mm,
don't see that. They don't see that there is the lessons that can be learned from, for example, the sadness, the grief, things like that, until and maybe in some ways until they get through it.
mm,
But in the meantime, like it takes you have to kind of remind yourself of those kinds of things, like your emotions are there to help you, but when you're experiencing a lot of heavy emotion, it doesn't feel like it. I feel like they're attacking you. It feels like you're under attack. And it's like you want to just tell everybody that everything to shut the hell up. Like, and that's fine too. You got to do that. Sometimes you need to be a little firm. That's okay.
Mm,
But for the most part, I would encourage everyone, if you can, to have a little balance. Be firm, but also be gentle with your emotions at the same time. Because if you're not going to be kind to yourself, to these parts who are all already hurt and wounded, probably already being yelled at and screamed at, and from parents or whoever else was demeaning or made you feel small when you were younger or whatever, if no one else is going to be kind to those parts, then you have to, you know?
that's true.
And that again, through that compassion, through that acceptance, that is where your strength comes from in
Mm,
your shadow.
man, had no idea this is the conversation we were going to be having tonight. I'm all the way, I'm all the way here for it. So, as we're recording this, and I'm going to try to get this up as quickly as possible because we've got about 10 days left in this campaign and we've got a bit of a ways to go. We're about halfway to the $15,000 goal. And there are some very interesting rewards, exciting rewards, I should say, including some of those aforementioned prints with the gold foil. Um, you've got art pieces. You've got a print signed by Phil Lamar.
I got two Green Lantern prints signed by Phil Lamar. I do.
Wow, those are dope.
I got them
Those-
signed at BlurCon last year.
Nice. I'm looking at this. I'm like, I recognize that print. That was the John Stewart Emerald Knight with the sword.
Yeah, yeah, from the one shot. Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's dope. Um, and then we've got stickers, we've got merchandise, we got like some t-shirts. Like there's a lot here. I really love this Behold My Power t-shirt.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I've been meaning to, honestly, that's been in my back pocket for a minute, man. Like I've been wanting to, my mom been bugging me, do some t-shirts. I need you to do some t-shirts. I said, okay, mommy, but I tried to explain to her like, you just can't put anything on a t-shirt and expect it to sell. I said, you got to do a strategy, you got to do something like that. You got to get something that people will believe in. And so I think I found something that hopefully, will be kind of cool. I feel like, having like a self-affirmation kind of thing would be kind of cool for people to have when they're wear it on their chest like an insignia. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
That's kind of what I felt behind that.
Yeah, no, the Beware My Power, that you got one. You got one there. Um, but even like just some of these the books, like the foil cover, I should I should share my screen. Maybe I should do that. So here we are on the campaign page. I'm a backer. That's what's up. I need to
Hey, what's
wish I
up?
could back it more. Yeah, that's the only thing about like doing what I do. I come across so many Kickstarters and I'm like, man, I wish I could like back everything at the highest level, but
Right.
I would need another job. So, but like, look at this cover. First of all, someone being pyrophobic, being afraid of fire, but having the power to wield fire is amazing in and of itself. Um, but even just, you could tell you were a graphic designer, first of all. But I love how this flows. Even the art in this book, and like I said, I was, because most of what I've known Jay for doing is like these pinup style pieces. And it's like, yes, there's a ton of like mood there. There's a lot of texture in those pieces, but I'm like, what are the sequentials gonna look like? And it's different. It's not exactly what you get on the covers, but it doesn't lose any of that heart. Um, the trying to think of like, okay, what does this remind me of? There's a series out right now called Uncanny Valley. It actually just wrapped up. Dave Wachter does the art there, and it's like two different art styles. There's this kid who's half human, a half cartoon, and so he has to. He's a real, he's a real boy, but he's a real kid. But he kind of goes into this cartoon world, and so when Dave is drawing the real world scenes, it's like this really textured, like you can almost, it's almost like you still see the pencil, like charcoal lines and stuff. And then when he goes in the cartoon world, it looks like straight up 2D flat color, like Looney Tunes type joint. Um,
Mm.
but this reminds me of like the real world elements there. This almost looks like, well, I guess I could just ask, how did you do this? Like, because it looks like markers and watercolors and like there's pencils in there. Like there's
Yeah.
texture and grit here that I just don't expect to see from people working digitally.
It's all digital. Yeah, just digital. Just a lot of textures and different brushes and things like that. Magic.
Insane.
Uh,
Insane. Yeah, nah, this looks amazing. If you guys, like people like Alex Ross or like JG Jones who do
mhm.
like that painted style, there's like a lot of rendering there.
Yeah.
This is kind of like three-quarters of the way there. There's a series called is it Birthright that Mark Wade did with JG Jones?
Wait, is that it was Superman?
No, Superman Birthright is a different thing that also
Oh, I was about to
Mark
say, because
Wade.
I got my weight birth rate right here. But
Uh,
no.
what is it called? Is it Birthright? I'm probably getting it. Strange Fruit is the name of that series.
Oh, okay.
So Strange Fruit is basically about like this Superman type figure that comes from like outer space, a black alien that
Yeah.
lands in like this town in the middle of like a racial conflict, which is interesting. But I loved the painted style in that book. Um, yeah, man, this looks amazing. Um, so yeah, I want, but like you said as well, like Detroit is definitely a central figure in the book. Um, when I heard you talking about the campaign somewhere else, I didn't realize the Burwood Wall was a real thing. Like I did not know there was something like that here in the States.
Yeah. Unsurprising, right?
Right. Like,
Even up north, right? Like people think
right.
up north is like, oh, safe. No, no.
Right. I was reading they did a is it Jeff Chang that did a huge book about Dilla
Uh-huh.
um recently. And I learned about like the Black Bottom neighborhood and stuff
There we go.
from that. But yeah, never knew about the Burwood Wall. Like, well, Motown documentaries didn't go far enough.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of history that I'm still learning about myself. So yeah, so this is what the earlier first version of her that I was telling you about back in
Mm,
2017.
wow. And I see like the gauntlets. Almost reminds me of like Teen Lantern.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
And so different iterations. Which comes back in
Mhm.
2023. That's amazing. I love that. Like even just you documenting the journey.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man, this is dope. So I'm just going through the whole campaign page since you guys are here because I want you to see it. And I want you to back it. So go ahead. You can go to comicsaredope.com/star wielder. Star, STAR, wielder, WIELDER. Comicsaredope.com/star wielder to back the campaign. Because if you don't back it and we don't get to goal, I won't get my books in the mail and I'll be really upset at you because I did my part already. So please go online and back this campaign.
That's better.
But yeah, I mean, gosh, these covers are beautiful. And then each of these covers is available as an 11 by 17 print.
Correct. Yep. And I'm excited to really get that one in my hands. I haven't got that one printed yet, but I'm
Mm,
excited to get it printed.
nice. Yeah, you see, there's one more wall behind me. I'm trying to figure out. I'm been trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with it. Decision might be made. Well, we'll get this campaign funded, and then we can figure that out.
And I also want to say for people who pledge $100 or more, you'll get one of these prints on the house for
Ooh, I had to pay for mine. See, I love these. So we've got one print with Storm and Nubia.
hmm
Storm in her like X-Men Red era outfit,
hmm
which I like. And then we got Black Power Storm. This one kind of looks like that girl that everybody keeps saying should play Storm.
Michaela, I forgot, Cora, I
I
can't
think
pronounce her
that's how you
last
say
name.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I have more that I'll be giving away too. I just haven't pictured all of them here, but I gotta probably update the campaign. But yeah, there are a few more that people will have the option to get if they decide to pledge $100 or more. So I like two more, I think.
Okay, dope.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get Jay to reprint that steel poster he had.
Oh goodness, I might have to redo it, man. Honestly, I might do another steal.
Word
Yeah, yeah.
works for me. Um, but yeah, so there's a you can back this like you can get your book for like as little as I think like $15. Yeah. But there's all these different tiers where you can get the book, you get a bunch of variants, you can get a bunch of posters, the shirt, the stickers, all of it in a bundle. So listen, shop till your heart's content. Back
Mhm.
it heavy. Get a copy for yourself, get a
Oh
copy
wait,
for some
I
loved
just
ones.
I just realized something. Did you pledge on the first day?
Probably.
I think you did. You got probably got the discounted rates. So this you got
Oh,
the first day special. I
oh,
raised my prices at the second after that day. So you got the original. I got the original prices up now. So you were able to get the deal.
oh, nice. Hey,
Yeah,
it pays to be on time.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's exciting. But yeah, you guys can, like I said, get your books. They're here. We got about a week to go on the campaign as you're seeing this. So please, we like the kind of money that jingles, but we'd rather have the kind that folds and get it done.
I
So
understood that reference.
so with all that said, Jay, this has been a great conversation. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming through, for educating me about shadow work. We talked about the history of Detroit. I feel like I learned a lot in this
Okay.
conversation and got to look at some cool art. So I appreciate you and you're welcome back at any time.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. Now, I know the campaign is live. Like I said, comicsaredope.com/Star Wielder. But for people who want to keep up with you, even after the campaign's done, where can they find you?
They can find me on all of my socials, including Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Twitter. We ain't doing that. It's I'm J Hero, the letter I, letter M, JAYHERO. All the same. I'm J Hero. And then also you can visit my website for my creative studio at HeroNationStudio.com. We can learn more about other projects, including Star Wielder, my prints, and more.
Nice. Nice.
Also, I want to say that I am also accepting commissions too. So
Okay.
and I am open for work, trying to get some rent paid this month, y'all. So hit me up.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We got to pay the rent.
Absolutely.
Can't fulfill Kickstarters with no place to fulfill from.
Oh, mm.
So let's get that done. Again, thank you so much for your time, Jay. And for all you guys out there, go back the campaign, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.